So that's today. I just wanted to do a share on the fourth dimension. It's something that I've been investigating. It sounds like a great thing. It sounds like maybe a unicorn or a pink elephant or whatever it is. This fourth dimension. What is it? How do I achieve it? Do I live in it? Is it a reality, or how do I get there? So I was listening to a little science kid. He was on the YouTube, and he was a lot younger than me. And I would hesitate to say he was probably in grade 8, and he was explaining dimensions and explaining the fourth dimension. And he kind of blew my mind because there is a physical reality that we are all a part of. And so he kind of explains the dimensions like this. This is the first dimension, it's length, and it goes in a line you can't see above it. It's just in one direction. And so then the second dimension is that line plus a line going up. So there is now a two-dimensional shape, and so that it has length and it has height. And then he adds the third dimension, and most of us could, if you just picture right now a cube, we can picture things in the 3D shapes because we live in the third dimension. And so we have height and length and depth. We live in that. And so we can all picture that kind of cube. And then he was explaining the fourth dimension and how unexplainable it actually is. Because he goes, if you live in the one dimension, you can't really fathom the two dimension. And if you live in the two dimension, you can't really understand the three dimensional. And so it's the same if you live in the third dimension, you can't really fathom what a shape in the fourth dimension looks like. And so he says, try to use your imagination. I'll try to draw it out. And so he actually uses a shape called a tesseract. I had to write that down, a tesseract. And it's like a cube kind of like puking on itself. So it's like this cube that kind of grows outside of itself. So here are the pictures of the 2D, the 3D, and then a tesseract. And it's really cool if you want to go look that up to kind of understand more about the fourth dimension. But he's suggesting if there's a fourth dimension, then there's an infinity of dimensions. And so it got me thinking about our reality that we live in. We live in this physical world, this emotional world, and this mental world. And so that is most of our reality of how we live before we get into so much trouble that we have to find a new reality. And so I am John. I am a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. And that's the world that I lived in. And so now we have this promise of a fourth dimension. We start to understand this spiritual malady, this spiritual sickness, this spiritual disconnect that we have. And only a power greater than ourselves, only the power of God can actually restore life to us. And so I got reading in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous about this concept of a fourth dimension, and we see it on page 25. We have found much of heaven. And so I've never seen heaven. I've seen pictures of heaven. I've seen concepts of heaven. I've heard that heaven has gold roads and we all get like a mansion in heaven. Some of us might get a doghouse in heaven. That's probably the range of housing that I'll probably get. But there's like this concept of heaven that maybe we've heard from, Nana, the Sunday school teacher with the flannel graph, whatever it is. We have this like kind of concept of what heaven looks like. There's angels and cool stuff that's happening, lights and cameras and action, and it's really cool. It's the place that we all want to go in the end, because the other part, the other option doesn't seem so great. And so maybe my reality is I've actually lived in the other option, which I call hell. Many of us can relate to that. So there's this people finding much of heaven. What does that look like? We have been rocketed into or catapulted into a fourth dimension of existence, which we had not even dreamed. And so this is a fourth dimension where we have a struggle even putting words into what it is. And so we can have this knowledge and we can have this understanding, but without an experience of it, then we can only be confined to this 3D world that we're so used to living in. We can't see out of it. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and towards God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do for ourselves. That's an amazing picture because it's nothing that I can do. And the hope of recovery, the hope of the Al-Anon or the alcoholic or the drug addict or the food addict, fill in the blank, is that the actual hope is that nothing actually has to change in my reality on the outside, in the third dimensional world. Nothing has to change there. It actually changes here. And so when we see the word rocketed into, and then on page 8, it says kind of the same understanding, where, oh, I lost it. Where is it? Come back. There it is. I found it. I was soon to be catapulted, and this is Bill's recollection of his own recovery and his experience, that I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passed. And it's an amazing concept. There's one word in there that really struck home for me in my meditation this morning, was into. When I think of catapults, I think of like a slingshot, and you're shooting something out into, like you're shooting something out of. And when you think of the at the circus, and you got that guy that goes into the cannon and they shoot him out and it gets a target. They're actually having this conversation about internally. It's catapulting into, so that the problem and the solution actually lies within me, inside of this dimension within me. The fourth dimension actually lies within me. That's an amazing thing, because the outside of the world doesn't have to change it. I actually get this change within. It's an amazing thing. I had a picture of, in my meditation time, I had this picture of an airplane. And if you've ever been in an airplane, some people are in Florida right now. I don't think they drove. I think they took an airplane. They're so lucky, fortunate. And when the airplane takes off, you get to see everything around. It's a bit nervous for me. I get a little bit anxious because you're doing something that is like incapable of myself doing it. So there's like this trust thing, and then there's some vibration, and you're like, I hope we make it. I hope we make it. And you get to see your reality that was so close. You get to see vehicles, and you get to see grass, and you get to see other airplanes, and they're so close. And then as you go down the runway and start to take off, you get this weird sensation and this weird feeling, and all the things that were so close are starting to go farther and farther away. And isn't that just like our reality? If I can't stretch the third dimension, there's no way that I'm going to get into the fourth dimension. And as the airplane goes up, it'll hit a point where, and if it has to be cloudy, it'll hit a point where we hit clouds and you can't see nothing. And you're like, is this going to be the rest of the ride? Like, all I see is white outside my window, and your like eyes are straining, and you're like, boom, all of a sudden you come above the cloud line. And there's like almost, I would say there's a glorious symphony that happens. And you're like, wow. And it looks like cotton candy all the way down in white fluffy clouds. And you can see the sun, and the sky is so blue. and it's breathtaking. And for me, that's really that catapulting into the fourth dimension that I don't even leave, it's within me. And that's the beautiful thing. It says right here, the creator has entered into our hearts. We're designed with a spirit to be able to have a spiritual connection with God. And so the process of deciding I want to be in the fourth dimension is actually going through a process of, you could call it inventory, whatever that is in your world. It's this cleaning and bringing things to the surface. And and I truly believe that love, this part of love, is consensual. And the program of action that we have, whether you're doing it through the LifeLab or through the 12 steps, whatever fellowship that you may have seen this process in, it's actually about asking God to illuminate your seeing the things that are blocking me, the things that are on my store shelf heart, the things that separate me from that spiritual connection, because we only have so much room on the store shelves of our heart. And I actually get to see that they are causing me pain and hurt. They are causing fear and resentment. I'm really living in the past and the future, and I can't be in the presence in the fourth dimension. That's where the fourth dimension is. It's neither the past or the future. It's right in the presence right now. Right now, my heart is in the presence with God and His Spirit, and I get to actually bring these up. I see them, and then I get to name them, and I get to say, hey, God, just like my drinking, just like my drugging, I couldn't even wish that away. There's no jail sentence. There's no people leaving me. There's no loss of finances, of freedom, whatever it is, that could wish my using away. Only you took it away. And just like resentment and fear, there's nothing, I can't blow those away. I can't wish them away. Would you take them? And so as God, as a loving God, a consensual love relationship, there might be things in your life that cause you pain. There might be sugar. There might be gluten. There might be like your cell phone. You're looking at your cell phone for 5 hours a day, 10 hours a day. Maybe you're watching too much Netflix. Maybe you're wearing clothes that get you negative attention. Imagine me as a loving relationship to you. I start to take all those things away. I start to say, no, you can't use your cell phone. It's bad for you. I start to put limitations on what you're doing. That's a controlling, manipulating relationship. Even though that me in the loving relationship, I have your best interest at mind. I think God sits there and goes, oh, child, oh, that's a loving relationship. That a God that cares so much, He's not just going to take everything away, but I have to bring things forward. I think the Spirit of God illuminates us so that we can see. That's why we need community. That's why we need each other, to be able to be mirrors to each other, to say hard things to each other, and to really love each other. And so all of a sudden, I have this spiritual connection as I bring this stuff up to the altar, and for God to burn it away as He will. And that's really how I enter the fourth dimension, is that there's harmony in my third dimensional world. And so I look at the harmony of my physical being, my emotional being, and my mental being. And so when God brings harmony and unity into my present, then I get to be in this spiritual realm. And so we don't really see the spiritual realm. Before I even knew it existed, I couldn't even understand it. I don't know, I could never put words to it, but we have spiritual experiences while we're in that. And it's not about knowledge, it's all about experience. And I like what Bill writes about the consequence or the result of this spiritual experience is that I will know happiness, peace, and usefulness. Because God's Spirit is inside of me, changing me. God never wants to change what I'm doing. He wants to change why I'm doing it. And so that's a true relationship of love. And so how does that look on a daily basis? How do I stay on that spiritual fourth dimension, so to say. It's within me. So how do I do this? How do I keep spiritually fit or spiritually connected in this fourth dimension when I live in the third dimensional world? That's the beautiful thing about a relationship with God, or with anybody. Falling in love is the easy part, but staying in love is the hard part. For those that are married, you'll totally understand that. But I think we can take that out of into any context. Falling in love with the gym is easy, you know, but committing to the year of the membership is the hard part. And so this is a beautiful part of our relationship with God, is that we actually get to do this we get our lives out of this spiritual realm, out of the fourth dimension, and we go into the world and do the will of God. So we are like we are spiritual beings doing human experiences. So when I live in the fourth dimension, the spiritual realm, I'm connected to the Spirit of God, and out of that relationship, I totally change my thinking, my perceptions, the way that I think about everything, my principles, the guiding forces in my life. All of a sudden, we see these principles. My experience with God in the fourth dimension almost like wipes the whiteboard of all the writing that life has given me, and all of a sudden I have this code of love and tolerance of others. I want to live the book, not just thump people over the head with it, not just to tell people about it, but actually live what this book says, what the Bible says. Like, I'm actually living it. Another one is being of maximum service to God and to the world around me. And then another one is like we change from being takers to givers. And those aren't natural things that come easy for me. This is through a relationship with God, almost like a fire when you're melting down gold or silver or whatever, you put it under fire, and all the dross or the bad stuff comes to the top, and we get to be rid of it. And so now you're going to have a pure product. And I don't know when we ever get pure. I'll let you know if I see purity in you, and you do the same with me. But I know that the beautiful thing about a loving relationship, it takes work. And so every day we get this task. We get to sit down in prayer meditation, and out of my prayer meditation comes life. And so on page 86 of the big book, we talk about God coming into our mental facilities. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental facilities as assurance. After all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane, the fourth dimension, when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. And so we go into this time every day, and we get to do prayer meditation. Me and Vicky do that. It takes about an hour in the morning, but then throughout the day, we get to do some extra exercise. And in the evening review, that I look at this life that I have in the fourth dimension, and I go, I get to constructively look how I was human. I think the best human example is Jesus. You got those bracelets. What would Jesus do? He is a spiritual being having a human experience, and he is doing the will of God. He even says, when he was going to die, he said, not my will be done, but your will be done. So to be actual human is to love others and to pass on the message of hope that we've been given. And so I actually have to engage in this relationship in a way that I take my ego that rebuilds on a daily basis, an hourly basis, a minute by minute basis, and I get to take this to a loving God that dismantles that, and I can have a solid connection with him again. I was reminded this week of duck soup, and if you were in the restaurant or even outside of the restaurant, you will know what I'm talking about. There was we go to church, and after church we go out for dinner, and three of us were at a Vietnamese place, and three of us ordered duck soup, curry duck soup. And I've had the curry duck soup before, so I love the curry duck soup, and it's fantastic. The other two women have never had it before. So the waiter comes down to the table, and he goes, marks everybody's, and he goes, there's only one duck soup left. The other people could have chicken or beef or whatever. And I instantly have this spike of fear. And I say, I think I was the first one that ordered. I should be able to keep it. The other two women were gracious and honorable and both chose chicken. I didn't have to get aggressive, but I was reminded how quick that I can go mine, me, living in the third dimension. It's all about me. It's all about what I want and what I can get, and not give. And that's how easy it is to bounce out of that dimension. And so I get to come into a loving relationship. I get to look at my behavior. I get to go, was this loving? Was this caring? Was this dishonest? Was I fearful? Do I owe an apology? Were my thoughts towards other people? Was I packing into the stream of life, or was I taking from the stream of life? And so the beautiful part that we've been trained to do in the action of the fourth dimension is a thing that we call watch and turn. So I'm watching for the third dimension to rise up. I'm watching for fear. I'm watching for selfishness. I'm watching for self-pity. I'm watching for insecurity. I'm watching for resentment. And then I turn to God. I watch and I turn. I watch and I turn. And I get to do that all day. And then I turn my thoughts to someone that I can help. And it doesn't mean I'm turning my actions. I'm turning my thoughts. And so when I turn my thoughts, I start to pray for, and I start to think about, and I start to put a plan together on how I could pray for somebody, or maybe that I can contact somebody that I haven't seen before. And I'm asking for God's Spirit to inspire me. And that's what inspire means, being in God's Spirit. And so that to me is really how I live in the fourth dimension. I think that I can bounce out of it and I'm 3D all of a sudden. I don't have harmony and I'm not united with God's Spirit. The beautiful thing is that He's given us the tools to stay connected in the fourth dimension so that I'm catapulted into within me and I have a beautiful relationship with a God that will solve all of my problems. Thank you.